The fall of Assad's regime in Syria has been faster than anyone imagined.
That the revolutionaries will be here in this square.
فإن غزة ستكون مقبرة له ووحلا لجنوده وقواته.
With skillful manipulating of the press, they're able to make the victim look like the criminal.
نحن نخشى أن نموت على فراشنا كما يموت البعير.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. Welcome to this first edition of the Make Noise, Make Change podcast. Now, as you guys know, I am the king of doing things on the spur of the moment. So this is the first episode, and I have two amazing guests with me. Bilal Kareem, who's not really a guest. You probably see him as a regular appearer on this show. And our brother Mansour Shouman from Gaza, who we're going to get to know, inshallah ta'ala. So this show is all about getting to know people who are supporting the Ummah, having that ummatic understanding. And that's why, inshallah ta'ala, with this new surge of people that are coming into free Syria, we hope we can bring you some of those people who are active in the affairs of the Ummah. As the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, that the one who doesn't care about the Ummah, he's not from amongst us. So inshallah ta'ala, we want you to be engaged, and we want to be engaged in what's happening in this Ummah. And part of that is Bilad al-Sham, the center of it, in fact. So without further ado, assalamu alaikum to both of my guests and my co-hosts. I'm going to call you co-host today.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
But I just have to say one thing and make sure everybody understands. I did not lose my guest status. I am still a guest here. I eat whatever I want when I come to his house because I'm a guest. If I lose that status, I got to bring my own food. So I'm still a guest here.
That's Bilal for you. Bilal opens the fridge. Bilal, takes my socks. Hopefully not my underwear. And
No, that's safe.
And this is the kind of banter that we have, bro. So we have an interesting relationship.
I've known Bilal for, I think, it's been since 2006, 2007, since our time in Dubai. We had a big group of, mashallah, Muslim brothers, a lot of expats from the UK as well there. So, subhanallah, I've been following his journey as well throughout these years, and it's an honor, Brother Bilal, to see you again, and looking forward to this conversation.
Allah yahfadhuk. I'm ecstatic to see you again, and we were having like a great conversation before the cameras started rolling. So let's just continue.
Yeah. So these guys are the old school, and I'm the new school. Yeah. So, Brother Mansour, we're going to start the podcast by finding out a little bit about yourself. Who is Mansour? What was your journey? How did you end up in Gaza? Because Gaza is not a place where just anybody turns up. The thing that I say is you don't choose Gaza. Gaza chooses you. Because Gaza was a really kind of pivotal moment in my life. So I would like to know how you ended up in Gaza and what was your journey preceding that?
No. So, before going to Gaza, I lived in Canada. I was in Alberta and in Calgary. I lived there for around 7 years. I was very active in the Muslim community there. I was thinking that, one of the things that I need to do is to build a strong Muslim community in Calgary, so that this will enable not only myself, but future generations, including my children, to continue to embrace Islam and for them to have a positive effect on the Ummah and the whole world. However, subhanAllah, I know there are a lot of success stories of raising children in the West, but for me it was a big challenge, especially for my older girls. And one day I just told my wife, what do you think about going to visit Gaza again? Because she's originally from Gaza. She has the Palestinian Authority passport showing that she's a Gaza resident.
Okay, that's interesting. So she's originally from Gaza and you're Palestinian as well?
Yes, I am. So I'm originally from Jerusalem, from a town called Beit Hanina on the outskirts of the old city. And the last time I was in Jerusalem was in 2009. And in 2009, the Israeli authorities, while I was leaving, took me into custody and took me into solitary confinement, interrogation in a place called Beit Tikva, and then to a jail in Asqalan. Ashkelon. And one of the outcomes of the court ruling was that Mansour, we are revoking your Jerusalem citizenship. It's a blue book. It's called Hawiyya al-Maqdisiyya.
Just like that.
Just like that. They of course lay out different terrorism charges, right? And they just said, you're out. You're not coming back. And this has been a systematic way, focusing on Jerusalem residents, finding any reason to revoke their citizenships, and so that in the future they won't be able to inherit any land or any property, and then at the end it goes to the Zionist settlers.
So how did you feel at that moment when they said to you, your citizenship is gone, you're not coming back here? Were they kind of evil and callous in the way they were saying it, or was it just very professional, or how did it happen, and how did you feel, more importantly?
Okay. So the Israelis, when they interrogate you, especially those with foreign passports, they focus a lot on hurting you mentally, not physically, right? I think that they are experts when it comes to mental torture and ensuring that in one way or another they are able to make you say things and put you in situations where you have to accept whatever they offer to you at the end of the day. And for me, when I knew from the judge that my Jerusalem passport has been revoked, I felt that this wasn't the end of the road, right? It hurts not to be able to go to Jerusalem right now, but I knew that this was the beginning of a journey that we need to strive back, not only to let Mansour go back to Jerusalem, but all the Ummah to go back to Jerusalem. And I think this was one of the motivating factors for me to be more involved, to be more politically active.
So you say it lit a fire inside you?
It did. They thought that by doing that they can kill the fire in a person, especially after going through the torture and the imprisonment and the experience that they take you through. But it actually made me more to think more strategically on what I can do in order to bring positive good on the Ummah at large. And it's always important for us to remember that you might not know what is the road that you will lead at the end of the day, but we just need to start by taking action. Right? So, subhanAllah, yes. So I wasn't able to go back to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land, but subhanAllah, Allah opened another way to go back to the Holy Land through Gaza.
I want to ask you a question. The passport that you had for Jerusalem, they didn't issue it. That came through the Palestinian Authority, isn't that right?
No, this is an Israeli document.
It's an Israeli document, yes. Right. Okay.
Interesting. So now you've been revoked of your Jerusalem identity. You've gone back to Canada. You've said to your wife, how about we visit Gaza for a vacation? What was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was it that made you say, this here in Canada is not working? I like Canada. I see the dawah work, the Muslim community, but this just ain't working for me. What was that final kind of straw?
I saw that my elder daughters were losing their Muslim identity. Even though they were in Islamic schools, even though we were very much entrenched in the Muslim community there, for some reason, it's the general environment, especially in Canada. It has a more of a leftist nature about how things go there. So and there's also a lot of gender education and the kind of thoughts that they try to. I don't know how, but they are able to place these thoughts and ideas into the young generation.
Yeah, I think the word that we use is more proselytization. It's like a da'wah, not an education. It's actually a whole system, cartoons, books, a whole kind of I would say,
Society.
yeah, I would say a Dajjalic system that is in play. And it's not just in Canada. I think many Muslim parents are seeing this reality all across, the West. I mean, recently in the UK, we also had protests from Muslim parents in Birmingham because of some of the LGBT curriculums and stuff, that were being taught to their children without their permissions, with no way of opting out. So yeah, I think I definitely understand that. So then, what happened next?
So my wife has never been to Gaza for many years. Hasn't been there for many years. So when I suggested the idea to her, she was like, "Are you crazy? Like, who wants to go to Gaza on vacation?"
What year was that?
It was end of 2021, right?
This is post-corona or in between?
Yeah, post-corona. So right now, so they didn't require, I think, the vaccination booklets to be able to travel anymore. So yes, it was post-corona. And I told her, ask your aunts, talk to your family that are and uncles in Gaza, see if you might spend a month or so there on vacation, just to try to understand the nature of the place. Try to see if there's other expats like us who speak in English, who have decided to go back to Gaza, right, from the West. See if there's any kind of community that will suit us, right? But it's just a vacation. Now, during that time, my eldest daughter and, subhanAllah, it was one point where we had social services visiting us every day or so, because one of the neighbors as well, she called the police on us because she heard shouting in the house. So she was like, something's wrong, maybe the kids, something's wrong with the kids. So for some reason, the system, again, in the West, I mean, when you have social services also involved all the time, it gets very irritating. And
it's
it gets
alienating.
very worrying.
I think there's one rule in the UK we have, for example, prevent. There's a certain kind of alienation, a targeting of Muslims, which is kind of sinister in its nature.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I met that neighbor later on. I was like, I don't know why you did what you did, but I mean, why didn't you just come and talk or try to see what was wrong? Why do you need to call social services? So Canadians in general, they're not they don't confront you directly. They might do things from behind your backs and then appear nice or smiling in front of you as if they didn't do anything. So I'm a very straightforward guy. I don't like sugarcoating sometimes words or not saying the truth. So
in America, we have the same thing. Even sometimes the people of the household, like the children, will go to school and will complain that my mother hit me or something along those lines. But my mother had a pretty effective way to deal with that. She would say, she told us, she said, if you're thinking about maybe going to school to complain or something, I just want to remind you that when the police come, eventually they're going to go home and it's only going to be me and you here. So we were like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about complaining, but I ain't got nothing to complain about. So
I think that was a different time though, right?
It's still it would be effective today.
So going back to Gaza, if I may. So again, why Gaza? Why not one of the other Muslim countries? Why not one of the Arab countries? Right. The thing is, I want a place I can call home, where I can buy a house, where I can grow in, and my children can grow without the need for them to leave that place. Right. If I go to the Gulf or any other Arab or Muslim country,
citizenship.
I'll go in a work permit. Right. Unless maybe I buy property in some countries and then they give you a 99-year. So it has some financial obligations, right? So, but in Gaza, because my wife is Palestinian from Gaza, no one can kick her out. No one can ask her to leave, even if she doesn't have a job, even if, and her family is there, right? So I was thinking we can set up base in Gaza, and then if it doesn't work out, we can then move to another place, another city, another country, right? But Gaza will be our route. Gaza is where we will set base. So subhanallah, my wife and family left before Ramadan in February. In February, I think, or end of January of 2022. And they go to Egypt, and then they have to go via road, via the Sinai Peninsula, Rafah border, and then they would get in. So I called my wife a couple of weeks later. I'm like, how are things? She says, Mansour, alhamdulillah, the children are very happy that they're connecting with their cousins, their aunts, their uncles. It's a very, very social atmosphere in Gaza. Like doors are open, people visit each other, people are there for each other.
Much more than Canada.
Of course, there's no like.
I certainly felt that when I came to Gaza. Is like it felt like my home, and I'm not even an Arab.
No.
You know, the love, the appreciation. I think obviously part of that is generally the Palestinian people and the way they are. But then the Gazans, especially because of the situation and that they besiege and not many people come and go, it's just like anybody who comes is like a hero, and they will immerse you into their families. They will. It's so contrasting to the West, where if you want to visit someone, you need an appointment. So that was really kind of I can understand completely what they would have felt.
Because you were there in 2009 during the Marmara incident, right?
The Marmara was 2010. 2009 was the Gaza convoys that we did with George Galloway. But yeah, definitely.
So so I told her, okay, so do you think there's a chance that we can live there? So she said, yeah, I think it's something that we can look into when I get back. I told her, well, the problem is...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, because I've been waiting for this part. You know, honey.
So,
did I fail to mention?
I told her that the problem is, as you're aware, if you do come back, and my elder children learn that we're going to stay in Gaza permanently, and the community or the local government knows about it, this can have an impact on our ability to leave Canada. They might say, how can you take your kids to somewhere that's considered
a war zone, etc.
War zone, right? So I told her, I made the decision, the strategic decision as the head of the family, to move to Gaza permanently. And she was in shock. She was like, are we going to leave Canada with all its leisure, with all its comfort, with everything, and live in Gaza permanently? I told her, this is what I'm comfortable with. At the end, I'm responsible, ultimately, for the future of my family. And you've been with me on this long journey. I want you to please trust me, trust the process. And inshallah, we'll build our life even better from Gaza. So alhamdulillah, it was hard on her, and it took time for her to eventually accept that fact. But sometimes, subhanallah, this is, I believe, the role of the husband at the end. Like, this is, you are ultimately responsible for the future of your wife, your children. Right?
Absolutely.
We all have our strengths and opportunities, men and women. And as a man, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be held accountable for the future of the upbringing of your kids. One of the things I told her is, on the Day of Judgment, when Allah asks me about the children, about the wife, what did you do? I'll tell him, I made a decision, for example, to go back to the Islamic world because I was afraid for the future of religion of my children, of even my wife, of even myself. Right?
How old were the kids at that time?
So I have 5 kids. At that time, they were, Aisha was 14, Fatima was 11, Omar was 8, Maryam was 4, and Ibrahim was 2.
Wow. So not an easy decision to move the whole family, small kids, etc. So I want to pause you just there, because this is a really important thing that a Western audience, they wouldn't really understand this paradigm. Why would someone who's living in the West leave what they have in terms of comforts, protection, safety, all of these things to move to not just a Muslim world or back to their own country, whether it's Pakistan, Bangladesh, or an Arab country, but to go to a place that is, you know, a war zone that's under siege.
Yes.
Bilal, maybe you can kind of chime in here because you've been through a similar thing where you made Hijra, where you left the comforts of the West to come to Syria. What were your thoughts when you took that journey a while back? Was it similar to what Brother Mansour was going through in terms of thinking about your children, or was it more of a personal journey? What was your thinking behind kind of making Hijra?
It was a bit different. See, my first Hijra was not to Syria. I left America, and I left America and wanted to live in a Muslim country. So I was living in Egypt for some time. Many years, and I got married there, and I lived in the Emirates, and you know, moved around a little bit. I think similar to what you're saying. But to come to Syria, I initially came here to do a documentary, and then when I came and I saw the situation here, I had this internal conversation with myself. I had filmed the documentary. I had, which they would call amazing footage. Mission accomplished. I'm putting my stuff in my bag. I'm getting ready to go. And then there's a voice that comes to me and says, so heading home, huh? And I was like, yeah, you know, mission accomplished. It's like, oh, okay. You know, these people need a voice to help people to understand, particularly in the West, what's going on here. You know, you were here for about 2 weeks. So, you know, heading home. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, I got a family. And the voice was like, well, there's 26 million other people who have a family. What makes you special? Why? Because you got a blue passport? You think you're somebody? That's literally what I was saying to myself. So I packed up my stuff and I went back. I was living in Egypt at the time, and I was sitting by the countryside. I was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia to cover the Hajj. And my wife was sitting next to me, and she was like, I'm really proud of you. You're going to go to Saudi Arabia. You're going to cover the Hajj and all. And I'm just sitting there. I'm looking at the water as my kids are splashing around. And I said, honey, I don't want to go. She said, I know. We'd been married 20 years. I said, I want to go back to Syria. She said, I know. And I was like, I mean, her support was not a condition, but it helped. It helped big time. You know, I kind of feel like my culture is a hybrid between American and Arab. I'm not a real American anymore. After being in Arab lands for 20 some years, my culture has changed a bit. But I'm not a real American, a real Arab either, and all. Can't really get into that Arabic coffee. You know, a lot of other things.
I think many of us can relate to that. Being a British Pakistani, I'm not really British, obviously being stateless now, and I'm not really Pakistani either. When you go back home to Pakistan, they're like, this person's ajnabi, you know.
He doesn't walk the same, he doesn't talk the same. So I think this principle, though, of leaving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it be your wealth, whether it be your family, I think that's one that people really struggle with. That how can you leave your family? You know, who's going to look after your family? How can you put your family in adverse danger, etc., etc.? Not knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the protector. He is the one who sees over all things. And those actions that we take, inshallah ta'ala, of course, you know, none of that is lost. And there's so much barakah in that. But just 1 second. See, you talked about the comforts. And of course, people in Canada, they're not going to understand this. Okay, so fast internet, cool. Nice roads, better than here. All right, that's nice too. Nice salary, yeah, but almost all of it's getting spent every month anyway. So what are we talking about here, basically? You know, all of these comforts. Yeah, you got some nice stuff there. There's no question about it. But I would tell you, in the pursuit of my dreams and to make Allah happy with the decisions that I'm making for His sake, What, fast internet? I can get my own internet. I don't need the West for that. I got everything. I'll put it out there. I got everything in making that move to these places for the sake of Allah. I got comfort.
You mean comfort of the heart?
I got comfort of the heart. When I came to Syria, I don't know, maybe most people don't know, but my Egyptian wife, she dumped me, and my 5 kids I had, and she kept me from seeing them, and I lost them. Allah gave me a new country. I had 5 kids there, and now I have in total now I have 17 kids. Allah replaced 1 wife and gave me 4. I got no complaints. You see what I'm saying? And I don't think that anybody else, and a lot of the brothers that went back, almost every last one of them lives either in a state of regret or utter misery. Am I telling the truth or not?
It's true, it's true. So, bringing it back to Brother Mansour. So you left the West to leave those comforts, to find the comfort of the heart in Gaza. Did you find it? That's the question.
Yes. I lived in many countries around the world, and I traveled around the world. I'll say it very frankly, even more than Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, subhanAllah, the atmosphere in Gaza was very different. SubhanAllah.
That's a big statement.
Yes, because I'm telling the truth. I never felt more at home, more at peace than being in Gaza. I felt Gaza is where we can do work for them, not only for Palestine, but for the Ummah at large. I felt it since I arrived there. Because Gaza is like a beehive. Everyone has a role there. Everyone is working together in a society, preparing. Everyone is there either in the masjid, either doing work for their families, working. You have to understand that since World War finished, right? If not all our Arab and Muslim countries, they aren't free. They're either ruled directly or indirectly by Western powers. Gaza is the black swan. Gaza is where freedom really is still.
Wow.
I never thought about it like that.
So we had a diplomat that visited once the US Congress. I'm not going to mention the name or the country of that diplomat, but when I spoke to him, he told me, Mansour, I went to the US Congress and they had a world map there. And they had like color codes, dots for every country, whether they were an ally of the US, whether they were neutral, whether they were an enemy, right? And he said there was one different colored dot for one location in the Middle East. That was like sticking out from all the other dots on the map. And I asked him, I asked the US congressman, why is that dot different? He said, this is Gaza.
Wow.
Gaza is the black hole. We do not know what to do with that area, with that place. We've tried to negotiate with them. We've tried to get them on board. We've tried to see if they were our allies. We do not know how to deal with Gaza.
Did they see the West Bank as the same way?
No, of course not. Because the West Bank is in a similar situation to other Arab or Muslim countries where they have a puppet government there that is actually more serving the Israeli and Zionist interests than the Palestinian interests on the ground, unfortunately. So when I went there, I saw that. I saw that these people were different. These people were acting for an ummah. They had the hum of the ummah, right? They knew that the adversity that they were going through, the siege, the continuous wars, the spies that were sent in all the time, they knew that they had a bigger role to play.
SubhanAllah.
They were preparing for something big. And they were masters tacticians, master strategists, and very, very innovative, very handy. And again, Gaza is like I said, it's very social, it's very open, and you can go into different houses and meet different people. So you can understand differences in opinion, understand how different people in leadership positions thought, and subhanallah, you felt that you were inside this big school, this big university called Gaza.
So when you moved there, did you fit into society straight away? Was it easier than you expected? Or was everybody on some kind of wave and you were trying to catch up? What was it like?
Good question. So, alhamdulillah, my wife's family are well known in Gaza, and they hold prominent positions academically or through careers or even in government. So, alhamdulillah, people, when they knew that I'm with that family, then inshallah this person is a trusted person. But you need to understand that Gaza, people are brought up with intelligence, being smart when it comes to intelligence, right? They've had so many different people come in, expats from the outside, that ended up being spies for different Western countries, right? So if I was in their place and a Canadian left Canada and came to Gaza, I'll be wary of that person. Even if that person had connections with Gaza for 2 decades or more, still him coming to Gaza in person, right? Like we still need to know who and what this guy was doing. So until October the 7th, there was this big question mark. Okay, still Mansour, he seems like a nice guy, but yeah, I mean, we have brothers and sisters who we've brought up in Gaza since birth, in our masjids, in our halaqah, in our community. They got educated outside and then came back. So what value will someone like Mansour add? He might bring more problems or issues rather than really add much value, right? So I was trying maybe to help in the grand scheme of things in Gaza prior to October the 7th, but if Gaza has something, if Gaza has something that is really different from a lot of places, their wealth is in human capability. يعني الإنسان في غزة, the human being in Gaza is the asset. It's their treasure. It's not the petrol, it's not the gold, it's not the gas, it's not the land, it's the people. That's the treasure of Gaza. So they had a wealth of people, of knowledge, of education, of understanding, of politics, of different kinds of realms, right? So where does Mansour fit in this? That was the question that they had. And again, prior to October the 7th, I was trying to add value to the society in general, but it was more on the peripherals.
So I just wanna interject there, because this idea of the wealth of Gaza being the people is something, again, a lot of people don't understand. Sometimes you have people that you meet in life, when they just walk into the room, you feel their aura, you feel their presence. And I felt in Gaza, many people that I met were like that. Whereas in the West, there's many people that you meet that may be millionaires, that are corporate businessmen, that are people of position, but you rarely get that sense or that feeling from them, right? People may be amazed by the Rolex watches or the nice car that they come in, but you always get a sense that this person himself isn't really happy with everything that he has. Whereas the difference in Gaza is when you meet people, every single person that you meet has this special characteristic. I can't explain it, and you become enamored because, with everything that is going on, they have this aura that is just spreading from inside them. That's how I felt. So I can completely resonate with what you're saying. But sadly, in the West, you find that very, very rarely in people. And I think in the beginning of the Syrian revolution, there were many people like that we found here, that had that aura, that had that belief. That was one of the reasons why I stayed. I saw some people and I was like, wow, these people are amazing. I want to be a part of them. How could I leave them? How could I leave them while they are part of this struggle? for the Ummah, for something great, and I would leave. So October 7th happened. Let's go back to October 7th. So before October 7th, you were still trying to kind of find your way. And then October 7th happened. Gaza is a small place. Did you feel something different? Was there like a tingle in the air? Was there something different before October? Were there whispers? Or was it just a total shock and surprise to everybody?
So the whisper that was around before October 7th was there was going to be some kind of operation. But it was going to be something minor, something where resistant fighters will go to one of the Israeli settlements with a military base, kidnap some soldiers, and then do the same thing as they did with Shalit a few years back. To bargain them so that the women and the children, the Palestinian women and children in the Israeli prisons can be released. One of the big as Muslims, subhanAllah, one of our major obligations is fikak al-asra, is to make sure that our prisoners are released. This is a very, very big obligation that as Muslims, subhanAllah, sometimes we forget about. But this was one of the core worries and core goals and objectives of the people of Gaza. Even though those that they want released, they're not from Gaza. They're 90% from the West Bank and from other Palestinian cities. They're not Gazans, right? But they're from the West Bank, for example. They're from Jerusalem, they're from Al-Khalid, etc., right? So, and you've seen that, I think, in the first round of negotiations that happened after October the 7th, the women and children were released. Only one or two were released from Gaza. Everyone else was released from outside. Outside. Mm-hmm. So the whisper was, minor operation. Few soldiers will be kidnapped and brought back to Gaza, and then there'll be a prisoner swap. That was the whisper. But even that whisper, before that, there were a lot of other rumors going out. So a lot of people didn't take that whisper into consideration.
They're like, take it seriously.
They're like, maybe, the West, maybe Israel, maybe the Arab countries were able to find ways to work with the Palestinians in Gaza to keep them at bay. We have this strong siege economically. Mm-hmm. There's over 80% unemployment. They were thinking that at one point the Palestinian people would revolt against their elected leaders, right? Because of the economic situation in Gaza. So they were putting a lot of pressure so that people inside will implode against the government that was there. And that was, I think, their strategy moving forward. And the intelligence that they had from the Egyptians, maybe from other people, was that, okay, I think that the Palestinians, they're comfortable. I think what they see when it comes to resistance, and resisting is just talk to keep the general public quiet, because people unite.
But there's nothing really there. Yeah.
But there's nothing really there, right? You've seen that with the Assad regime, right?
Yeah.
The Assad regime, they always talk about
axis
Israel,
of resistance.
America is their enemy, and they need to fight, and they've been saying that for decades, right? And nothing really has happened. They actually worked against the Palestinian people in Syria and in other places. So when October 7th happened, it was a shock to everyone. It was a shock to everyone. No one expected. No one saw this coming.
Good shock.
We didn't know what was happening. Like we didn't know were we being hit? Was there an assassination attempt, and then this was a retaliation? Was there a regional war that started? All we were hearing was the sound of rockets firing. We don't know if it was coming, it was going. Mm-hmm. It was just the sky was full of artillery. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what was happening. We only started to know, I think 30 minutes into the day, we started seeing the first images from social media coming in, pictures and videos.
So you guys being in Gaza started seeing it on social media, and then you started understanding what was happening. You didn't. That's crazy.
Yeah, they could hear it firsthand.
Yeah, an hour and a half into the day, there was a speech by Abu Khalid Muhammad al-Daif explaining what basically had happened. And he was talking about, that everyone needs to participate in it. And he was calling on the people of the West Bank, the Arabs in 1984, in Lebanon, in Syria, in the Muslims and the Arabs and the free world everywhere, that this is your moment. If you want to come and help us to free Palestine, they call Tufan al-Aqsa. They didn't call Tufan Gaza. They called Tufan al-Aqsa. So al-Aqsa flood. Their goal was, we need to start the process of freeing al-Aqsa. Right? He also talked about freeing the prisoners. This was the secondary objective. So they wanted to ensure that we are working towards a free Aqsa and to free our prisoners. Because you have to remember, up until that point, the Israelis and the Americans were feeling very comfortable with their politics in the region. You've heard about the Abrahamic Accords, right?
Yeah, sure.
So they were seeing that, okay, slowly the different Gulf country leaderships started having these deals, peace and economic relations with Israel, right?
Normalization.
Because everything was being calm and normalization. And they were almost going to sign something with Saudi Arabia as well. So subhanAllah, when this happened,
it was like a spanner in the works.
It shook up everything. No one saw this coming. I mean, even maybe our brothers here in Syria, maybe they had plans to do what they did earlier, but because of what happened in Gaza, everything got paused, everything got stopped, right? The general, I think everyone was in shock and awe. And even Israel didn't start its retaliation except 48 hours later. Because
they were stunned. They were stunned.
No one knew what was happening.
I think, yeah.
I just want to ask a quick question. When it happened, everybody in Gaza knew that there would be a retaliation because that's normal.
Of course, yes.
But in lieu of that, once they heard about what had happened, what was the feeling inside of the people? Was it, yes, the brothers are resisting, or was it, oh my God, what have they done? What was the feeling there?
Overjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
People were overjoyed because they felt this, we don't have any tanks, we don't have any air, we don't have any Air Force, we don't have any, like, it's just small militias in this small besieged land. We were able, with 3,000 people, to have this much of an impact. We were able to reach 50 kilometers inside Israel. We were able to bring back
it's a new reality.
These hostages.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to, break through these barriers, physical barriers,
and
all around Gaza.
And then what happened? Did people start joining in themselves? Did they start because what happened here with, of course, the recent Rad al-Adwan offensive, is that when people saw that the enemy lines, Assad's lines were faltering and breaking, everybody rushed in. The tribes, the shop owners, everybody. It was the first time in Syria in 13 years that every single person, because they'd just been, strangled in the north in these refugee camps, everybody just got up and began to fight and resist. Is that a similar thing that happened in Gaza?
No, it wasn't. What happened in Gaza was, again, this is public information, is that certain fighters were called upon before sunrise on October the 7th in different locations, and were given a plan. Each one were given a specific plan, a specific target, right, to go and execute it. And all 3,000, except those that were asked to return with hostages, were told, you're gonna most probably be killed. And if you don't want to go on this mission, there's no problem. Please, you can excuse yourself and you can go back home. And not a single person of those 3,000 people said no.
You kidding me?
Not a single person of those people said no.
Wow.
And out of those 3,000 people, 80% came back alive to Gaza. What happened is when people saw that there was no more enemy and the settlements, the kibbutzes were also exposed, that many people in Gaza started leaving their homes and going to these settlements
To explore, to see what's there.
to explore, to see, to feel. SubhanAllah, we're back in Palestine. Maybe this is the beginning of us going to our 1948 occupied cities. People were like in shock. They were so happy. They didn't know what to do. So a lot of people left Gaza and just went into the unknown and just spent time in the kibbutzes and in the settlements and in the military bases around Gaza. It was like a trip. Some people took their families, their kids, and went and came back during the day. So and go ahead. Sorry.
I think for a lot of us outside, even us here in Syria, we felt this sense of joy that these people had finally escaped their prison. And that's what it looked like to us, like people were just coming out, they've escaped the prison, you know, and they were finally out. So I think that was kind of the feeling outside. So after the initial kind of successes, you could say, of the military there, once things had calmed down and they'd come back, and then obviously there was a serious bombardment. Obviously this was kind of a phase where you kind of came to prominence as one of the English speakers in Gaza covering the events. What was that like? I mean, what was one of the most heartbreaking things that you saw in that time? I'm sure you must have seen a lot of things, but if you could potentially tell us about.
First of all, tying into that, let's talk about the humanitarian situation, and then I'll slowly dive into answering your questions directly. We have to understand that the people in Gaza know for a fact that Israel, regardless of October the 7th happening or not, they would have attacked Gaza. Because no one felt safe. No one understood what the people of Gaza wanted or did not want to do, right? And like I told you, that the United States and their policies, they didn't trust the people of Gaza. Yes, it wasn't a priority for them to go and attack Gaza, right? And to slowly start creating the Greater Israel plan, right? Which goes from the Nile River in Egypt to the Euphrates in Iraq, and Gaza is the beginning. So Gaza would have been attacked anyway. And in preparation for that attack, my understanding later was there was a 6-month humanitarian plan where there was enough material, food, basic necessities stocked up within Gaza to make sure that the 2 million population were taken care of.
So they wouldn't starve, basically.
So they wouldn't starve.
That was the plan.
That was the plan, right? So, and when October the 7th was executed, they thought, yes, we will go into an extended war, right? There will be a lot of casualties. There will be suffering, but at the end it's worth it because Al-Aqsa is the goal, right? Our prisoners, we want to free them, right? That's the goal. To awaken the Ummah is the goal. But no one saw that the last year and 4 months. No one expected that Zionism will expose the reality of what they are through their actions, that they have filmed and portrayed to the world by themselves.
But I want to ask you, you mentioned that they said that we know that there's going to be an extended period of hostility,
Yes.
i.e. we're going to get bombed.
Yes.
And they knew that, they understood that.
Yes.
And they said, but it's going to be worth it. Now, 6 months passed, and it's been a year and 4 months now. Would they still say, I'm talking about the average Palestinian, would they still say it was worth it?
Okay. If the average Palestinian in Gaza didn't feel that it was worth it, then their actions would have been louder than their words. You have to understand now that all the Palestinians in Gaza are living very close together, dwelling in refugee camps. They're living in tents. They're living in bomb buildings. If they were against October the 7th and the repercussions of October the 7th, you wouldn't have seen still a functional society. You would have seen a revolt. You would have seen them crying on different TV stations, on their own social media, right? Talking in the worst ways possible against the people who did and committed October the 7th.
I've never seen them do that.
I haven't seen that.
Neither have I.
And
even though they have, from a logical perspective, all the right. You've lost everything. If you
look at a logical perspective,
it's like you've lost everything because of
these people.
Because of these people. Well, they did. Why are the people still functioning in society? How come, like that's what Israel is saying all the time. I mean, we look at the news coming from Hebrew, is like, why aren't they revolting against the perpetrators of October the 7th? We don't understand. Like, the people need to take the action into their own hands. Well, maybe it's because they know that it wasn't about October the 7th.
They understood.
Maybe they looked into history and see what your ancestors did to their ancestors, and that regardless if October the 7th happened or did not happen, they knew that you were still committing and are going to commit such crimes against them.
I think they see them as the major oppressor, and you could say David struck back at Goliath, so of course they would be with David. Why would they be with Goliath, the big giant, the oppressor that's been oppressing them for all of these years?
And there's been also one very important thing that happened, brothers. How a Sinwar was martyred.
Wow.
This was extremely... it changed the hearts and the minds of the Palestinians in Gaza big time. Because a lot of Zionist media were saying that Sinwar is hiding in his
and the leadership have left
with his wife and with his children.
And he's eating good.
And he's eating good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's left his people suffering in the tents, right? And then subhanallah, look at how Allah plans. Hamas didn't publish anything.
They didn't have anything to publish.
It's crazy. The Israelis, they published
The
it.
Israelis did it.
We all woke up one day, and then slowly pictures started coming out from Rafah, published by Israeli soldiers, showing the picture of an elder gentleman that has been of a corpse of an elder gentleman, and he was covered in dust, and he was in a demolished building, and people started saying, "We've killed Sinwar. We're not sure. We have to make DNA tests." And people started looking at the Sinwar picture. The first thing I saw was, that looks like him, but maybe not. And then I saw that he was wearing the Ju'ba.
The vest, yeah.
The vest. Is that a vest? Okay. Did they put the vest on him?
Because normally he was wearing suits and stuff like that.
I mean, the Israelis maybe put the vest because you have to understand that the Zionists are masters of media, masters of manipulation. So everything they post, you have to sometimes take a step back and think, why did they do what they did? Later on, we understood that it wasn't planned the way that they posted these pictures. It was just Israeli soldiers celebrating and putting it on their own Telegram groups and saying, "Yeah, look, we killed them, we achieved that." But this wasn't part of a social media plan by the Israeli intelligence or by the Israeli military to publish Sinwar picture in that way. So later they said, we have a video by one of our drones showing how the defeated Sinwar, who was running like a rat, and showing how we took him out. We'll show you his last moments.
Yeah.
So they wanted the image of Sinwar to be someone who is defeated, which means that the resistance is defeated, showing someone that is like demoralized on his last moments, sitting crippled on a chair. They thought that image would break the people. Would break the people and break the resistance. That this is your leader, he's done, we got him. That was part of that was their strategy. The pictures showing him wearing the jubba was
That just happened just randomly.
But if the picture wasn't posted, they wouldn't have posted the video.
The drones, okay.
The drones. They would have maybe brushed Sinwar's image, give him maybe a dress, put him in a tunnel, taken a picture in the tunnel, and say, look, we killed Sinwar who was hiding in this tunnel. This is where the originals be. They would have put some food around him. They would have made it look like they actually executed him in the tunnel, right? But because the soldiers posted the pictures of him in the rubble, in the building, they wanted to showcase a different story. That this is not a man who was fighting, no, this was a man that was crippled, that was demoralized, that was... And then the whole world saw that drone footage. I could only see Izzah. That, subhanAllah, taking action. That's what Allah asked us to do. Take action. Even if... Take action. What did he do? He wanted to resist, even if it's in his final moments. And he didn't want to show the world that, look, this is Sinwar. No, he was still taking bil asbab. He wanted to conceal his identity so that people don't think, so that the soldiers don't think that he's an important person and target him. Maybe they'll think he's an older gentleman. Why do we need to waste a bomb on him, right? So he continued to conceal his identity. And what did he do? He tried to hit the drone and break it by throwing that stick. And again, this is akhd asbab, doing what you can and resisting.
My mother, she taught us, of course, she grew up in the South in America, during times of intense inequality and stuff like that. And she told me, son, don't ever let your enemies choose your heroes for you. And the whole world was Yahya Sinwar, terrorist, finally killed, and so on and so forth, and all. They wanted to choose the heroes for the Palestinian people. Maybe they wanted Mahmoud Abbas to be the hero. But that was not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-Mudabbir had planned things. Here, these soldiers put the images out, forced the hand of the Israeli government to put the drone footage out. And they're like, oh, what did you guys do that for? Oh, and then we'll put this out. Oh, that made it worse. Because not only did you have Palestinians, dude, I saw people from around the planet who did a reenactment of putting the Palestinian kafir on their heads, sitting on a sofa and taking a stick and just going like this, just like Yahya Sinwar. I never saw people take such an approach like that. I never saw that before. And I'm sure that wasn't Netanyahu's idea or whatever, but it just happened like that.
So that was going to be my next question. What was one of the most uplifting things that you saw that uplifted the Gazan people? But before we come to some more of the uplifting things, I want to go back to those initial moments when the bombardment came and things happened. What were the heartbreaking things you saw? The humanitarian crisis? What did you witness?
So we had a flat in Gaza city, in the downtown area, in a place called Al-Rimad. And the first thing that happened in our neighborhood was an airstrike hit and destroyed our masjid, Al-Abbas Mosque. This was one of the oldest mosques in the city, and this was the mosque where Sheikh Ahmad Yassin used to deliver his lectures and his speeches and do his sermons. So that's one of the first things the Israelis did. They hit the masjids because they knew that this masjid is, for them, maybe this is, if we hit the masjids, we will hit their hearts. We will hit their community center.
Yeah.
We will hit their source of power, their congregation, right? That was the first thing I noticed, masjids being targeted. The second thing is the continuous sound of drones everywhere. And the Israelis have the ability to mute the sounds, the voices of the drones. But they deliberately keep the drones' sounds high for part of mental warfare tactics, right? It
Like a
keeps you alert,
psychological
doesn't allow
torture.
you to sleep. It frightens the children and the women all the time, right? That we are there, we're always watching you. The third thing is chemical warfare. Several times, chemical bombs were used to hit the peripheries of Gaza city and some areas inside Gaza, and we were covering ourselves and our children's mouths and faces with a cloth and with water.
Chlorine? Did it smell like chlorine?
I don't remember smelling it personally, but we were the vapors were like close to us, and people. One of the positive things is that, subhanallah, everyone opened their houses to each other. So in our house, we had people who were living in areas that started to get heavily bombarded, and people came and stayed with us. So our house, for example, had all the women, and then all the men stayed at one of our neighbors, for example, right? And
people you knew, people you didn't know?
Yeah, people, my name is Mansour, your name is Muhammad, I'm your neighbor from that building, you're from the building. Our family knows your family, tafaddal. Yeah, we need to stand by together, inshallah, a few days, and inshallah, they will come to an agreement to do the prisoner exchange, So, again, personally, the first time I was almost, subhanallah, killed, was in the 5th day, and I went to get bread for my family. And I was walking back beside a Shifa hospital, and right on top of me, the building to my left, I heard the noise of a rocket coming down. I looked up, I saw that rocket hit the building to my left. I saw it hit the building to my left that I was walking, and I did my shahada, and then and beside me was like a logistics truck. It was a big truck, and there was space under the truck, and I went and I slipped under the truck, and then loads of rocks were falling down and shrapnels and other, and I was telling myself, okay, do I leave or do I wait? And I heard people, under the rubble. I heard people injured. I said, no, the building still didn't fully collapse. I need to wait until the building fully collapses. So after that, another airstrike hit the building, and the third strike hit the building. I waited until the third airstrike.
How much kind of time was this? Did you have a sense of the time?
Seconds, 10 seconds maximum. 10 seconds for the 3 bombs to hit. I waited for half a minute for things to settle.
All the dust and debris.
And then I just removed the rubble from beside the truck, and I stood up and I started walking towards my house. And all this time, I was still holding the 2 bags of bread in my hand. I was fully covered in sand, and the bread was like full, but I was still holding these 2 bags of bread, as if I'm sending a message that we will continue surviving.
Okay, I'm sorry, this is a little bit off topic here, and I've been good so far. But
Yeah.
when you got home, and you've got all of this dust and everything, and then you still got this bread in your hand, what did your kids say?
So before I went home, I started to shout that, come, there are people under the rubble, we need to help. And everyone was saying it's not safe, they're going to bomb the area again, and they asked me to leave. And I was still in shock. I still didn't know I don't know if I was injured. I didn't know, right? And slowly the ambulances and the civil defense came to the area, and a few people checked on me. They said, you're okay, you're just in shock. Where do you live? I live nearby. Okay, just go home.
Yeah, I think the first time you go through a situation like that, you're in shock. But then eventually, once it happens, I mean, this might sound crazy, people watching this, but we're guys that have been kind of in that situation. So the first time, the shock. The second time, you start reacting a bit faster. And then after that, you start to kind of realize what you need to do, how you need to pull people out of the rubble, where you need to go. And you start becoming one of the people where when you see other people, you're checking the other people and say, okay, you're all right. Listen, mate, go home.
I needed someone to give me direction at that time, right? SubhanAllah, these people, they've been through several bombardments and mini wars, right?
So they know it, yeah.
They know the protocol, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to them and I just walked home. And when I went, the elevators were not working, so I was just walking up the stairs. And then I just put my feet inside the door, and my wife, I knew that airstrike, you were involved in some or another, that you were hurt.
You at it again.
I had the feeling that, and she collapsed crying, like, oh, I told you not to go. Why did you go out? Why did you go out? And then the neighbors came and they checked on me. They told him he's okay, he's fine. He just has some dust on him,
Who took the bread? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Pop, oh man, it looked like you had a rough day. Now about that bread.
Thank you for delivering the bread, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first personal experience I had that was very, very, very strong. SubhanAllah.
Let me ask you. Okay, you said first, so that's I assume that there were subsequent ones also.
Yes.
For me, I was in quite a few of these explosions. None of them had an effect really, except the initial, except one. And that one, I relived it virtually every day for 2 years. For 2 years, every day, I could be sitting in traffic, and then just all of a sudden, I'm back. My car is twirling in the air, in the air, and slams down onto the ground. And it only happens just in a second. Did you have anything like that from those attacks?
People who know me, they say, Mansour, you have a fish memory. I don't, subhanAllah, I forget quickly, and I focus on, okay, what do I need to do next?
That's really interesting you say that, because I'm gonna tell you a story. I think that's one way that I've learned to deal with trauma. I have exactly the same thing. So some of these instances, I kind of just, they go somewhere in the memory, and they go, I don't know if they get deleted or they're there. And if I really need to think about it, I'll think about it. Otherwise, they're gone. Like the other day, my family was kind of upset with me, and I'm revealing this first time. But I had one of my wives. She had a miscarriage, or she had a stillbirth. She had a bad pregnancy, and she had a placenta abruption. She nearly died, but the baby, she survived, alhamdulillah. But the baby passed away. It was very close to the end of kind of the birth and stuff. So as you do, you name the baby Saifuddin. I did the janaza, buried the baby, got on with life. After they were asking me, where did you bury the baby? I was like, I can't remember. They were like, what do you mean you can't remember? I was like, that's it. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave me this baby. I did the janazah myself with the people. I did the ghusl. We done what we needed to do. Buried the baby. Khalas, alhamdulillah. They were like, are you crazy? What do you mean you don't know?
What do you mean?
You don't know where you buried the baby?
Yeah.
I was like, so then I had to really think about it to try and extract from my memory where I buried the baby. And for everyone else, it's like, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? And I think I've just kind of developed that to kind of deal with these things. I want to be focusing on what to do now. And how to help the ummah rather than dwell on these things.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get it. But look, we have to look at reality.
It's not a planned thing. It's just it's just kind of happened. So I can relate to what you're saying. So your situation is different. I suppose it's different for every person, right?
I understand what you're saying. I had to mentally, when things like this happen, I mentally imagine myself building a brick wall, and I consciously put my feelings on one side and I'm on the other side. So that, and I just take a few seconds and I'm doing this. I mean, not physically, but mentally, to wall off my feelings. But look, let me just tell you.
Yours is a bit different. Mine's a bit autopilot.
Okay, but let me tell you, and I'll tell you the same thing. This is not normal. This is not how normal people live, but it's our reality. Most people who might be watching, they wouldn't understand what's he talking about. Trauma, you forgot when your baby is born. Are you kidding me? And it's like, and you come home trauma and all. It's like, well, I don't even really remember. I had the bread, but I don't remember what happened. This is not normal, but it's normal for us when you're in these kinds of situations. Yes, it's not normal.
So
Yeah,
you go
I'd
on.
like to take a break and maybe come back and continue this.
So we'll take a little break, get some water, and then inshallah we will continue. All right, guys. So we're back. This is part 2. We took a short break for salah, restroom. We were talking about trauma, and how we've managed to just kind of build some mechanisms to deal with trauma. So, right, we've been through Gaza. This difficult destruction. I want to come back to the family because we started with the family. So now all of this carnage, chaos is going on. Your family was shocked that you took them there in the first place. What was the reaction when now they've kind of come to terms with this kind of apocalyptic war that is taking place?
Oh, wait, just one quick thing. You didn't tell us what the reaction of the children were, that they were going to stay there. You told us about the wife, but what about the kids?
You're going back.
Okay,
back.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry, man. But just tell us briefly, and then we'll get right into his question. What did the kids say when it was like, okay, kids, we're home now? And they're like, well, we haven't gone anywhere.
So the younger 3 kids, they were very happy that mom and dad are together again, and we're here with extended family, and they have a lot of other children to play with, and it's much better weather than in Canada. There's a beach, and they didn't understand the complexity of the situation. The elder 2, Aisha and Fatima, in the beginning it was difficult because they had a lot of friends. They made a lot of long-term friends in Canada, and they were afraid about living and integrating back into a society that was predominantly Muslim, right? They were used to live in a very multicultural society, and they were hearing about all of these rumors about persecution and women rights and being forced to do certain things. So, subhanAllah, children this age are very, very, very smart and very well
Switched on.
And subhanAllah, my children now, and they were 11 and 14. MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, the coffee has arrived.
MashaAllah.
Jazakallah khair, okay.
MashaAllah. Like, sometimes they would discuss things that I wouldn't even have thought about when I was 11 or 14 years old. So subhanAllah, they used to have these. They were afraid that they will not make friends. They were afraid that, again, the taboo that was about Muslim women treatment from the West for Muslim women in Muslim countries will now be applicable to them. But subhanAllah, a few months later, Aisha and Fatima both sat with me and my wife and said, Mama, Baba, you saved us.
Wow.
Because
that must have been a great moment.
Oh, yeah.
Because, look, subhanAllah, Islam is fitra. Islam is, fitra is...
What do they call it?
The natural disposition.
Is the natural...
Now the co-host thing is working. You know what I mean?
And if you try to live your life away from how you're naturally supposed to live it, subhanAllah, there will be some kind of imbalance in your mental state, your physical state, your spiritual state, and the environment in Gaza. Of course, it's not perfect, but subhanAllah, the society itself, in general, was leading an Islamic way of life. And subhanAllah, my children, alhamdulillah, wore the hijab, for example, on their own, started doing the 5 times salah. They were encouraging their siblings. They were also doing direct or indirect da'wah to their friends in Canada. Alhamdulillah, we continued, my children didn't have smartphones, right? Because we feel it's a big distraction, right? But we kept them engaged with their teachers, with their friends, right? because we didn't want them to feel totally alienated and stuck, or as you may say here in Gaza. And then, alhamdulillah, what helped was enrolling them in an international school in Gaza. So again, there was a large expat community similar to us, of people who used to live in Europe, in the Americas, right? And then decided to come back to Gaza for the same reasons.
And that made them feel comfortable.
That's really, that's crazy. A lot of people wouldn't know that there's a large expat community that living in Gaza.
Relatively large, relatively large.
But we're talking 50 people, 100 people, more?
Maybe around a couple of hundred families.
Wow.
But again, the trend before October the 7th was increasing. And like the school capacity wasn't able to even handle the extra children that were coming in.
Was it because pre-October 7th there was a sense of stability in Gaza?
Because people around the world would be shocked. I mean, like people were going like there.
So again, we're talking about pre-October 7th. So from 2006 up until that point, there were 6 mini escalations. The longest one was for 51 days, so less than 2 months. So people that wanted to come back to Gaza, and Gaza was their home, and their family was there, and they understood the religious aspect of staying on that holy land, they're prepared to sacrifice some of the leisures of this life in order to stay in Gaza, right? And again, what's the worst that can happen? 2 to 3 months or 4? Well, we've gone through that before, and people have survived.
Well, you could die. That is the worst that can happen.
You could die, but if you look at the numbers, like how many people maximum died before October the 7th, like, right? Like a few thousand, for example, out of 2.3 million. So I'm not trying to say this is minuscule. There is a chance, of course, but wallahi, I've lived in the West, and the number of people that died from drug overdose, the number of people that died due to sexual violence, the number of people that would die of
gang
car
violence,
accidents, the number that maybe wouldn't physically die, but khalas, morally, they're dead, is much, much, much more than people that embrace Islam or come back to the fold of Islam. Like, I was afraid that I will lose my family and my children if I stayed in Canada or in those other countries, because even if I didn't, subhanAllah, they didn't die physically, I might lose them in terms of the connection, the moral connection that I had, the spiritual connection that I have in them. So for me, it was worth the risk. And at the end, you only live once. You only live once. And as Muslims, we believe that this life is temporary, this life is a test, and the real life will happen after we die. So, subhanAllah, and I'm now 40 years old. And if I don't take action now, and I don't try to help my family now on the right path, when will I do that?
So some would say a normal person has a midlife crisis. They go buy a Harley Davidson. They go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You decide to go to Gaza. So alhamdulillah, it worked out in a sense that, wife was happy, you were happy, the older kids, the girls, they were also happy. Then October 7th happens. And then this kind of apocalypse of bombing and destruction happens. How did they take that? Obviously, we had the first incident where you came and brought in the bread. What happened? Did you see a lot of the tahjir, moving, displacement from place to place. Were you guys a part of that?
Yes. So after around, in the first week, bombings didn't stop, especially in our neighborhood, which was considered to be one of the more well-off neighborhood, financially, higher upper class, middle upper class. And this was the first time in the past 6 wars we were told that they never targeted Ar-Rimal the way they targeted this time, and they were shocked. People used to buy property in Ar-Rimal thinking that it's safe. It's safer. But for some reason, they were targeting Ar-Rimal very hard. And from our veranda, from our balcony, we could see like showers of bombs that would come raining down. And we didn't really know what to do, to be honest. Some people were saying that if they were going to target your building, you would get a call or a message saying that leave the building now. We're going to target it in the next 5 minutes. Some people say no. Their people were bombed without being given any warning. We didn't know what to do. We spent a lot of time socializing with each other, visiting those who lost loved ones, trying to make sure that we had proper access to electricity, internet, phone lines. We had enough food stored, enough water stored. Trying to make a sense of everything and trying to, because for me, this is something new. Like, I didn't live the war in Gaza like the people of Gaza did since 2006, right? So I wanted to understand, okay, what do I do? What do you guys do, right? What do I need to do? So everyone was saying, be calm, inshallah, this will pass. They're going to, inshallah, align and agree on some kind of ceasefire moving forward, and they're going to do a prisoner exchange. We just need to be, patient. But then a neighbor in our building, she works with a UN agency. She was shouting in the street, I got a confidential email from the UN saying that Israel is going to enter via land to the north and that we all need to evacuate to the south. And Barri, they're going to enter with tanks and,
wow.
and this never happened before.
Right.
They did enter into some areas, right, but not into Gaza city. Not to the downtown of Gaza.
Not
city.
a massive crowd like that, yeah.
And people started then, like rumors were going out that, okay, this is going to be different. This is going to be different. They want to send a message that you've hit us strong inside our settlements. We're going to attack and control your capital, which is Gaza city. Before, they used to attack other places, but not the capital, not Gaza city. So that's when people started saying, okay, we might need to go and leave Gaza city to the south. And before doing that, what we did as a family, we said, okay, let's try to study the situation more. We decided to leave our home temporarily and stay at a Shifa hospital compound. Okay. A Shifa hospital is the biggest hospital in Gaza Strip and the main hospital in Gaza city, and it was like 200 meters away from our house. And when I arrived there with my family, I saw tens of thousands of people all around, inside, around the gate, around the walls.
These were injured people or people seeking safety, sanctuary?
Seeking sanctuary, thinking that hospitals are a safe zone. So if we stay there, inshallah we'll be safe because they're not supposed to target.
So they had the same idea as you guys?
Yeah, that hospitals are safe zones, right? But when we arrived there, we saw that there's no way for us to get food. There's no way for us to get water. There's no access to electricity. Doesn't make sense. We can't stay in a Shifa hospital. There is no way for us to sustain life.
It's not viable.
Yeah. So I called a friend who was living at the southern border of Gaza city. He was the principal of the school that our children were going to. He was from Ad-Dahdouh family, which is the same family of Uncle Wa'il, the journalist of Al Jazeera.
Okay, yeah.
That the Israelis killed his wife, killed his son, killed his grandchildren. He was a cousin of Uncle Wa'il. And I told him this was our situation, Brother Ayman, and we were wondering if we can come and stay with you. And this man had no obligation to take us in. We weren't his direct family. We, without any hesitation, he said, my house is your house, my food is my food, everything I have is for you and your family. Don't hesitate. I'm sending you a car, come and stay to my place. No hesitation. And over the next 2 to 3 days, we stayed at his house. and the area that my apartment was in Al was very heavily bombarded. Like from a safety perspective, it was the right decision. But again, we didn't know what to do. And then there were rumors that the Rafah border is open to those with international passports. So my wife and I and my family said, let's try to leave Gaza, you know. We didn't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
So we went to the border and they said, no one is allowed to leave. The borders are closed. There are no officials either from the Palestinian side or the Egyptian side to process any paperwork. You need to go back. So when we were traveling on our way to the border, of course, Salah ad-Din Road was being bombed. We were seeing corpses and cars damaged all over the road. So on our way back, we decided, instead of going back to Gaza City, to stay in Khan Yunis with a family, with a cousin of my wife's family. And subhanAllah, it was there when I reached out to a friend that I know that works as a real journalist, who was staying inside Nasser Hospital. You have to understand that hospitals are where the media presence was.
Yeah.
Al-Shifa in the north, Al-Aqsa in the central region, and Nasser in the south. So I told him, brother, I can speak English. I've lived in the West. Do you need help to get the voice out about what's happening in Gaza to the Western world? Because the message that I was getting and the feeds that I was seeing coming out of there was all negative about the Palestinians. And the rumors that were perpetrated around the Palestinians that were untrue, that had no one to counter it from the Gaza side, wasn't being done successfully.
The 40 babies, the rapes and stuff like that.
Right. So he said, that's a good idea. Let me see what I can do. So half an hour later, I get a call from Al Jazeera English. And they're like, we were told that you're a Canadian citizen that's staying in Gaza, and you want to talk to the media about what's happening in Gaza. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yes. He says, are you available in the next hour? We need you to come with us live to talk to us about what you're going through. It was my first experience. I'm like, sure, let's do it. So I took a room in the house that we were staying in with Brother Ayman. I told him, no one come in. I need to focus. It's like, this is something like first time, like this is big. Like
before this, you had no social media presence, nothing.
So I have an engineering degree and an MBA from Canadian universities. I used to work in Big Four consulting. I used to work with the public sector. I used to work in oil and gas. I was your typical career-oriented 8 to 5 person, right? I had I didn't have any social media presence. I didn't have any experience in journalism. And I never, ever interacted with TikTok or Instagram. I didn't have any of that, right? I used to have like a personal Facebook page, and I used to check videos on YouTube. That's it. But I didn't have any social media presence before that. And subhanAllah, I was preparing like for that interview. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? So I remember, for example, getting extracts of pictures. Like they were saying that they beheaded that the Palestinians beheaded babies. So I had actual pictures of beheaded Palestinian children, or children that you would see their hands has been dislocated from their body, or trying to showcase the reality of what's happening on the ground for people like us, right? So alhamdulillah, I think that interview went well, because after that, the phone calls never stopped. Like we have this Canadian citizen, who's willing to talk.
To speak about it.
Because you have to understand, I'm sure there are people that are much, much more capable than I. But everyone was afraid that if I go on public TV, I'll be targeted. My family will be targeted.
Yeah,
right?
which is understandable.
So people maybe were not
Putting themselves forward.
exactly. So the phone calls started to happen, and I was telling them, my wife's family and my wife,
That's when the reality starts to set
look,
in.
I think I need to be more involved here. So I need to go to Nasser Hospital, and I need to sit with the media teams there and see what else I can do. So I went to Nasser Hospital, and it was a very busy day. And when I came back at night, I'm coming back to stay with my family, and we're living in this shared apartment in a building, 5 families all crammed together. The women on one side, children, brothers. I was stopped at the entrance of the building, and I was told, Mansour, we'll take care of your family.
But not you.
We'll make sure they get everything they need. Your family is our family. But we cannot risk having a journalist to live in the building anymore.
In the same building as yours.
Yes.
Wow.
So I said, yeah, totally understand it. I totally understand the situation. They said, yeah, we packed your bags and everything.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that in some way or another, you can meet physically, with your wife. But we know the situation. We know the spies in the area. We know the drones. Like they have experience. Mm-hmm. They know exactly what. And if
they know you're living here, this place is going to get hit.
And it did get hit. Right, they were targeted, and I'll come to that, because for them, they think about it that, okay, now there are hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, and if there are spies in the area or drones that are capturing non-Arabic words spoken, so my children speak in English together, right? So it's a different language. They might be mistaken for hostages.
Hostages, yeah.
Right? So for them, they were trying to mitigate the risks, right? And I know that my family loves me, and I know that they were very distraught by that. But subhanAllah, it was like a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, okay, khalas, you want to sacrifice? Khalas. You have to be ready to sacrifice everything you love if you want to start to be on this road.
SubhanAllah.
And I remember calling my friend in the media team. I'm like, do you have a bed space in one of your tents? I think I'm going to come back and join you guys for the night. So, and that's when my journey in Nasser Hospital started, staying in a tent beside the maternity ward, together with other journalists from different media.
I just kind of jump in here a little bit. When people see you, some people might say, oh man, I want to be like him. I want to do what he does. You see, I'm sure when they see you doing your thing here, they say the same thing. But sometimes they don't know what it costs. It ain't free. When you go to a place, like even me, I would live in a certain house. And when my voice started coming out during the conflict here and everything, how many landlords put me out? They told me, hey man, we like you, we think you're a good guy and everything, but I don't think you can stay here. It must have been three different houses. So I understand what that feels like. But your situation was a bit different because they were like, okay, we'll take in your family, but you have to go. How did that feel for you? Were you like, oh man, that's messed up? Or were you like, okay, all right, if I want to walk this route, this is what I have to do? When they first told you that, I'm not talking about after it, when you had time to think about it, that instant when they told you, sorry, Mansour, stay cool, you can't stay here.
I was surprised. I didn't expect it. I didn't think that this was going to happen. I was surprised. I was angry also, to be honest. Yeah.
When you thought about it later, of course, you can understand your position. Not saying it's right or wrong, but in those difficult circumstances, people have to make decisions, right? So you're in Al Nasser Hospital now. Your family's in a different place. Had they already been saying to you, look, we want to leave, and as soon as opportunity we get, we want to be out of here, and we want you to come with us? Or what was the last communication you had with them before you kind of permanently became Mansour Shouman, the journalist and the guy covering the events on the ground?
So we had direct communication with the Canadian consulate in Jerusalem, and they told us that they are engaging in communication with the Egyptians, with the Israelis, with the Palestinians, in order for us to ensure that Canadians are given safe passage to exit Gaza Strip through the Rafah border, but it's going to take some time. How much time? They said, we don't know. So it started on October the 7th. I think the call we got to leave Gaza saying, Mansour, you, your wife, and your children, your names have been approved to leave. You need to leave tomorrow. I think it was on November the 7th, so 1 month later. So it took a month for the Canadian authorities to get approval for the first group of Canadians to leave Gaza. During that time, there was communication through WhatsApp, through SMS, with my wife. And sometimes it was brought up that, okay, what are we going to do once we are allowed to leave? And as Muslims, one of the Sab' al-Mubiqat, one of the 7 worst sins that you can commit,
Tawalli Yawm
al-Zahf. And
explain Tawalli Yawm al-Zahf for those that don't understand Arabic.
So, if an aggressor attacks a Muslim land, right, and you're obliged to counter,
to stay
and counter, you don't need to counter it by physically carrying a weapon, right? You can counter it by helping people from under the rubble. You can counter it by donating your blood.
As a doctor,
you can counter it by physically showing that despite you able to leave as a Canadian, you decided to stay because you are principled and you want to stay with your people, which will elevate the morale of the people around you.
Sahih.
Right?
That's right.
You can resist and continue to fight by ensuring that the words that you say are a form of da'wah against the Zionist propaganda, against Muslims and Islam and Palestinians. So Tawalli Yawm al-Zahf is running away from the battlefield. That's one of the 7 major sins. So I didn't want to fall in that category of leaving the battlefield.
No, may Allah protect us all from that. So your wife called you. She says, Mansour, we've got the green light. Pack your bags. Let's go.
Yeah.
How did that conversation go down?
When I talked to when I was doing my interviews with different stations, especially the Canadian ones, they told me once you are given the green light to leave, will you and your family leave? I always gave a standard answer, which is I'm not leaving, but my wife and children, they're not really adding any value. They're just taking up resources. So I think that they should leave. Because and inshallah once things calm down in Gaza they'll come back, because we cannot do the same mistake of our ancestors that left their land in 1948 and 1967. Right. We need to stay strong here with our families. So publicly I would say that look, they should leave, but in my heart and when I talk to my wife I would tell her, I know you want to leave, but I would love it if you stay here with me and we go through this struggle together. That was the honest discussion I was having with her. I told her, I'll do everything I can to care for you, but please don't leave. Stay here with the children. Stay with me. Like you are my, subhanAllah, you're my oneness. You're my soul. You're my soulmate.
My support.
We've been through the hard and thin, and this is what's happening here is monumental. But we need to do this together. Don't leave. Until the morning of the day that they left, I had a hope that my wife would decide to stay with the kids. But on the morning of the day that they left, she came with a car to the tent that I was staying at in Nasser Hospital. And the kids came down. And she came down with them. And she was crying. And the children were crying.
SubhanAllah.
And the police came because they what's going on? Why are these people crying? The doctors came. Like, what's wrong with this family who's talking in English and crying? And I mean, they're looking at, what did you do? And it was chaos.
Yeah.
So I explained in Arabic in a loud voice so that everyone understands what's actually happening is that we've been given the green light to leave because we're Canadians, but I decided to stay. And my family are trying to persuade me
To live with them.
So everyone was so...
SubhanAllah.
And a lot of people are coming to me saying, you need to go, brother.
I can imagine that scene.
Haram, your kids. You need to go. And I remember taking my wife to the side, and she had her cousin with her. And I told her, Suzanne, خلاص, I love you. I'm happy that you decided to leave. Inshallah, I'll be waiting for you here in Gaza. Okay, so that once things calm down, again, this was November. We thought the war was going to go for 2, 3, 6 months, and then people will come back, right? I'm going to stay here because we need to stay here. Please, you can take the kids and go. I'm happy. And أنا راضي عنك. Because she was asking for
your blessing.
Are you sure you're not mad from me? Are you sure,
which is understandable.
You're not going to leave me? Are you sure? I'm like, no, don't worry. I'll do everything I can to make sure that you're well taken care of, even outside. So I agreed with her on a plan on what to do outside, to go to her family in the UAE. I spoke with her family members there. We put a plan together. And before that, I told her to stay in Egypt for a few weeks because I thought that
maybe things would calm down.
And there was a short there was a short ceasefire, if you remember, end of November, right? So I told her, wait in Egypt for a few weeks, things might calm down, then you come back, right? So I connected her with people. So I did a quick plan for 30 minutes. And then I sat with the young ones. I told them, Baba, if I leave, who's going to find Milo? And Milo was our cat.
All right. Oh, I thought it was the drink. Like, who's going to...
No. So we had a cat. His name was Milo. But because of the bombings on our neighborhood, Milo, at one point left our flat and never came back. So for them, Milo was important. So I told them, I need to stay back because who's going to be there for Milo, right? So like, yeah, Baba, thank you. Yes, we need to find Milo. And then I sat with my elder daughters. I'm like, Baba, you need to stay strong. I'll be here waiting for you. I'm safe. I'm in the hospital. Nothing's gonna happen. And I need to do this. There aren't a lot of people that can do what I'm doing. And khalas, I'm already out there. So Baba, you need to be patient. Inshallah, it's gonna be a few weeks, and we will meet again. And then we said our salams, and they left. And after that, people kept coming throughout the day to the tent to see who's this Canadian that decided to stay, while so many people wanted to leave.
And how did that feel? Because it must have been really difficult. Your family's left, but now all of these people are coming to see you.
So again, we go back to what we were talking, that the way my personality is, khalas, back to work.
That's it, back in the zone.
Back to work. I have a schedule, I have an agenda, I have to stick to. We have work that needs to be done. Right? So yes, it's important to socialize and interact with the people that come in, but if I have work that needs to be done, that's the priority. We need to add value. We need to make sure that we like this is we need to help.
And I can definitely attest to that. Since he's been here in Syria, every day it's like, what's the plan? Talk to us the plan. Where are we going? What are we doing? So, alhamdulillah, that's a positive thing.
Because if you're not going to be home, you may as well get to work.
Yeah.
It is no point in being out there, wherever out there actually is, if you're just going to kind of lazing around and getting up at 11, 12 o'clock, midday, and going to the mall. It's like, hey, I'm not in Syria for that.
Yeah, I think I've found that with myself, whenever I'm not busy doing work or, in support of the Ummah or trying to do something, then I start, and I'm left to my own device and at home, I start getting depressed. I start thinking about, so I like to, it's a blessing to be busy. That's one of the things I say. It's a blessing to be able to be busy in the path of Allah.
Okay, I get that. But again, I'm just bringing this up again. This is not a normal thing. It's not normal to be sitting there saying, I'm going to feel down if I'm not working harder. Most people are talking about, when am I going on vacation? Dude, I ain't had no vacation in 13 years. I don't know what that's like. If I went on vacation, I wouldn't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit on the beach and go like this. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. I got to go. I'm messed up like that. So, this is not a normal type of existence. But the Ummah needs people who don't have that normal life, because things are not going to get righted by going 9 to 5, coming home by 5:30. I mean, in other words, you're not going out to go and fight for the Ummah, whatever fight actually means for you, at 9, and you get to wherever your office is at 9:30, you fight and everything.
And then you just get to clock off.
And you get to clock off and come home and put your feet up and your food is ready. I'd love for a setup like that, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think, subhanAllah, when I look at the Sahaba, I look at the Ashra Mubashirin, you realize that these were, I wouldn't say abnormal, but they were a supernatural people. And I think if we want to be from the front runners, was-sabiqun, then we need to kind of internalize that and embody that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be from amongst them. So, okay, let's fast forward, because we've been going on for quite a while, and inshallah, I hope people are going to be interested. I'm sure we can do 10 podcasts from just your story alone. You started covering all the stuff that's taking place. We all saw on our screens what was happening. How did it eventually come to you leaving Gaza? How did that transpire? Because obviously that happened some months later, right?
So this is a big fast forward. So the decision came to leave Gaza when I only possessed at that moment my passport and my wallet. I had lost everything else. So I wasn't able to communicate with the outside world. I wasn't able to do the charity work that I used to do. Security-wise, compromised.
Nowhere to stay.
Nowhere to stay. Nowhere to communicate with. It came to a point where I felt I wasn't able to add any value anymore. I was just going to be one of the 2 million people that would just be consuming resources.
And if the Israelis caught up with you, you'd have gotten your butt kicked. That's the reality of the situation, because you told.
And we, subhanAllah, look, the best way to die is to die as a martyr. And the Prophet ﷺ wished it. وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ لَوَدِدْتُ أَنْ أَغْزُوَ فَأُقْتَلْ. He said it 3 times. I wish to struggle in the path of Allah and get killed 3 times. But how much the martyr sees from, subhanAllah, blessings and glad tidings after he dies. So, inshallah, we would welcome martyrdom. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't, لم يكتبها. He didn't, it wasn't the fate. But احنا as Muslims, we need to continue to do what's right for the Muslim Ummah, right? And if Allah didn't fate at that point for you martyrdom, that means that you don't lay back and ask them to just target you and kill you.
I think this is a really striking point, right? Because this is where the jihad of the nafs comes in, right? Because sometimes we as insan, we want something.
No.
And now you've lost everything, everything's gone. and you've come to the realization that while I'm being here, I'm using up resources. I'm not really adding any value, like you said. But I really want to be here. I don't want to leave. I really want to be here. And this is where you have to weigh up. Am I now doing it for my want and desire to be here? Or am I doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And that's a different kind of challenge or test. I found that myself sometimes, that subhanAllah, I've been put in certain positions where I've wanted to do something really bad. Like I wanted to be a part of that journey, or I wanted to be a part of that. But then people have said to me, no, Abu Hussam, you can't, because you are needed. And that happened to me in Gaza. 2009, I wanted to stay. Not a lot of people know that I wanted to stay, and they said, you can't stay. They said, your voices are more important outside. And I remember every single one of us on the bus leaving Gaza, we cried. When I look at it now, in hindsight, I say, subhanAllah, it's because of Gaza, I came to Syria and did the work that I was doing. If it wasn't for Gaza, we wouldn't have done any of the work we've done in Syria. So I suppose, and this is the kind of end note on this point, is that Allah, of course, had a plan for you. And that plan has kind of resulted in you being here in Syria. So what brought you now from Gaza and all of that situation to Syria? And what are you doing in Syria now?
So exactly a year ago, you and I had a live on Instagram. Your team had reached out to me saying, hey, we need to do a live together on Instagram. And then my team said yes. Then they sent me a message saying, there's this brother from Syria who wants to do a live with you. I'm like, subhanAllah, Syria. Since the Syrian revolution started in 2011, it mobilized the Muslim Ummah at large. Historically, we know that Salah ad-Din, when he freed Syria, that's what made his way to free Palestine and Jerusalem. So when the Syrian revolution and people started working in 2011, lots of people from all around the world, from all different nationalities, were trying to help the Syrian people in different ways. And yes, I'm Palestinian, but the Syrian cause was very close to my heart. And one of the reasons, actually the reason why I was asked to leave the UAE is because we were trying to help our brothers and sisters in Syria through humanitarian perspective in order to ensure that they remain strong and steadfast, especially in the north. Alhamdulillah, So Syria was always very close to my heart. And I remember talking to people thinking, did the work of the Syrian people go in vain? Because since 2011 to 2024, when we had that live before, I was like, subhanAllah, over 1 million shaheed, millions of people displaced. At that time, the factions were,
there was internal
fighting. Ya Allah, Ya Rab, if Syria is lost and Gaza is lost, then where is the victorious At-Ta'if al-Mansura? The victorious people that we've read about in the hadith, that despite everyone in the world going against them, they continue to remain victorious and steadfast and patient until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings down the victory amongst them that they are looking forward to. So at that time, I wanted to connect with a brother that was living in Syria and show the world how the people in Gaza continue to resist and continue to remain strong despite everything the Israelis are throwing at them, similar to how the Syrian people were staying resilient and strong despite everything the Assad regime, the Persians and the Russians were throwing down at them. So it was a very important link up, and it was to show the Ummah that we are one despite where we are. So alhamdulillah, it was an honor connecting with you. And sorry, brother Bilal.
I wanted to ask a question. Look, somebody's going to watch this thing and they're going to say, listen, Mansour, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You've got America, you've got the Israelis, you've got all of these big powers. who do you think you are? Do you think you're going to change anything? You're staying behind. Just go live your life somewhere. Don't throw your life away on this. People many people feel that way. They felt that way about some of the work that we were doing. If they're saying that to you, what would be your response?
I would say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us to act, and He didn't ask us for results. And if Allah has given me certain strengths and certain areas where I can be utilized for the benefit of the Ummah, I will utilize that to the maximum and always find different ways where I can always try to add value to the Ummah moving forward. Will it succeed? I don't know. Will I add any value? I have no idea. But subhanAllah, that's why as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't ask us for results. يطلب منا العمل. He asks us to work. And for me, the priority as an ummah right now is for us to regain our strength politically, economically, morally, because we have so much to give back to this world. This world has been ruled by unjust systems, by man-made, corrupt protocols, whether it be economically, financially, ethically, through the education system, through the political system, and I feel that we owe the world the message of Islam. We owe the world for them and their future generations to be saved, not only in this life and the hereafter. For me, this is not only a matter of freeing Palestine. It's a matter of da'wah. It's a matter of calling people to what Islam is all about. And when I did my work, when I tried to do my work in Palestine, I always tried to show the Islamic part of things, right? I tried to tie telling the news with strength and resilience and ayah and hadith and helping people understand why the people of Gaza are remaining strong as they are. We are nobody. If any one of us thinks that without us this Islam will fall or nothing will happen, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us. Is testing each one of us, listening or working. We need to have the right intention. The biggest struggle I had in Gaza wasn't the bombs, wasn't the lack of sleep, wasn't the lack of food, wasn't moving around, wasn't losing everything. The biggest challenge I had was ensuring that my intention was to do this work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to do it in the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the most challenging thing. Everything else is minor. Because at the end, you don't want to end up in the day of judgment in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then He says, Mansour, yes, you did all of this, but you did this for fame. You did this so that it can be said, 1, 2, 3. You did this for money. You did this for, right? This is the biggest worry and the biggest obstacle that I had. So, wallahi, once you put yourself out, Brother Bilal, as you're aware, in the public space, you will always be criticized, right? Khalas, this is something you have to take in with a very soft heart and just focus on the work. Focus on doing the right mashura, focusing on being with the right brothers, and always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten the way for you. Because you might have the best mind and put the best strategies, but if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't help you with your day-to-day life and help you in the direction, then I don't want everything to go in vain.
SubhanAllah. So I think to wrap up this podcast, I've got loads of questions I want to ask. I'm sure there's many people that are watching that have got many questions that they want to ask, and I'm sure we're going to definitely do a second link up, Bismillah ta'ala. You touched on a really important point where you said that my thing was always about the Ummah. You being a Palestinian, being from Al-Quds, seeing the situation in Syria, the Syrian conflict actually exposed a lot of people who claimed to be pro-Palestine but had other agendas, or started to say that you cannot be pro-Palestine if you are anti-Assad. What are your thoughts on that? to kind of wrap up this podcast, inshallah.
So during my time here in Syria, I wanted to listen to the Palestinians themselves who lived during the time of Assad in Syria. I didn't want to listen to what's on social media or what's out there in the news or to friends. I wanted to listen to Palestinians living in Syria to understand, is it true? Was Assad pro-Palestinian? Was Assad pro-resistance? What was the reality of the situation? And from speaking to these Palestinians directly, Palestinians who have been living here for decades, they all told me one thing. Mansour, they used Palestine as a way in order to show their credibility to the Muslim and Arab world. Because the whole Islamic and Arabic world, if you tell them that I'm Palestinian, I'm pro-Palestine, immediately this will catch their hearts, this will catch their minds, right? But the regime always said that. They used his words. Similar to when Israel used to continue to bomb Syria for the last couple of decades, and they always said the same thing. We will return back fire at the right time, at the right moment. But they never did, right? They told me that, Mansour, look at the Yarmouk camp. Look at the different Palestinian refugee camps within Syria. They have been obliterated. They have been fully destroyed. Look at the Palestinian people, including hundreds of women in the Syrian jails and detention centers. Look at what happened to them. I spoke with Najiyat, with some of the women who are in these prisons. They have horrible encounters that we cannot even talk about to the outside
They have a
world
Palestinian branch prison. It's called Farah Palestini.
Farah Palestine, and I think it's one of the worst.
We visited it.
The worst places to go. If you go there, it means your life has ended in some way or another. It's like a death sentence. So the history of the Assad regime and his creed, his ideology, whether it be because of the Ba'ath, whether it be because of how the Alawi teachings are, is that they hate Islam. They hate Muslims. They believe that we are their historical enemies. Even though, subhanAllah, Alawis and Alawites, they thrived under Islam and Muslim for 1400 years. But when they were handed over the leadership of Syria by the French and the British after Sykes and Biko, they totally took the opportunity to kill anyone who spoke about Muslim or Islam. And again, if you want to, similar to Palestine, if you want to understand Palestine, you cannot look at October 7 and start from there. You have to start from many decades before. Similar to Syria. To understand Syria, you cannot start from December the 8th, December the 8th, 2024, or even 2011. You need to look many, many decades before that. Only then can you understand what the Syrians went through and why they did this revolution and how bad Assad was, not only for Palestinians, but for the whole region as well.
SubhanAllah. So on that note, inshallah ta'ala, Jazakallah khairan to everyone who's tuned in. Please do put your questions in the boxes. I know that you guys are going to have many unanswered questions. But inshallah, we will definitely try to do another one. If you liked it, please do like, share and subscribe. And inshallah ta'ala, hopefully we will bring you more episodes like this that we hope will enable you to make noise, make change. Assalamu alaikum.